All right, today we're going to recap the three major Kentucky Derby prep races that were run yesterday. We're going to start with Justify winning the Santa Anita Derby. Late last night I put out a video basically laying out my case as to why I thought the Santa Anita Derby buyer figure for Justify should have been 110. I don't know if you saw the video or not, but it ended up the buyer figure maker ended up settling on 107 for Justify in the Santa Anita Derby. They actually had a variant that indicated that the track was getting a little quicker as the day progressed. They had the first of the three two-turn dirt route races, which was the starter allowance run as race 3. They had that race just as fast as I had it, but they had Justify, running 3 points slower than I had in the Santa Anita Derby. I had them a 110, they had them a 107, and they had the Grade 1 Santa Anita Oaks run as a race 11, actually 5 points slower than I had it. I had it a 95, they had it a 90. You could see here a real interesting thing about, the 90 they settled on for the Grade 1 Santa Anita Oaks. I mean, this is a 3-year-old fillies this time of year. 3-year-olds this time of year are generally improving and developing. You got classy ones. This is a Grade 1 stake. They had all 9 fillies in this race go backwards off their last number. Midnight Bassu, the impressive winner, won a Grade 1 by 3.5 in a race that was strung out, 42 lengths from winner to last with big margins in between. She got a 90. Her previous figure was a 94. Spectator, who finished a good second in the race, she got an 84. Her last out buyer was an 85. 13 Squared, the Baffert filly, she got a 79. Her last out figure was a 90. Exuberance got a 68. Her last out figure was a 76. Fool's Paradise got a 67. Her last out figure was a 74. First Dudette, she got a 66. Her previous figure was a 70. We All Have Dreams, she got a 50 in the Santa Anita Oaks. She run 25 points better last time, 75 in her prior start. The French horse here run a 37. She was 35 points better last time. And Spring Lily run a 25. She was actually 52 points better last time. So they had every single one of the 9 3-year-old fillies in the Grade 1 Santa Anita Oaks regressing. Midnight Bassu backwards 4 points in victory. A very impressive victory. In fact, Spectator backwards a point. 13 Squared backwards 11 points, and so on down the line. Now, the difference, my variant was a straight variant. They had the track getting a little quicker as it progressed. So, if you go by my variant, this is a 95, that's an 89. This is an 84. And I only had 2 horses in this race going forward. Well, first Dudette a point too. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I know a lot of people really don't care for wonky discussions on speed figures. But I think it's, very important to note. I really felt it was a cut and dry 110 on the buyer scale for justifying the Santa Anita Derby. But, they didn't see it that way. They actually had the first of the 3 routes just like I had it, same figure. But Justify's race, they had 3 points slower, indicating they thought the track sped up 3 points from race 3 to race 9. And they had race 11 5 points lower than I had it, which means they thought the track sped up 5 points from race 3. So, that's I don't agree with them, but that's that's how it come back. So I mean, I was just, if you happen to see that video last night, we're off by 3 points, and that's that. Now, getting back to the forms of these 3 prep winners here, you see on Briz speed figures, and I would squabble with this figure just as much, because I think, just as I thought the buyer was clearly 3 points too slow. I think, the Briz is too fast. 114 Briz speed figure for Justified. This is Ed DeRosa said on Twitter it's the fastest for a Kentucky Derby points race ever. I don't know if he means since they went to the point system or just in general for the preps. But I could tell you this. The Triple Crown winner, American Pharoah, in his entire racing career, American Pharoah never ran a Briz speed figure faster than 113. And he only ran 113 once. It was when he won the Breeders' Cup Classic by 6.5 lengths in his final start. That got American Pharoah his top Briz speed figure of 113. Really hard to believe that Justify, for me, ran better than American Pharoah's best race. But, using the Briz numbers, he's 114. That's the fastest prep, in pretty much memory on those figures. On the Bayer figures, just 107. They had the track getting quicker, and, boy, I really thought it was a cut and dry 110. So, with all that out of the way, let's go watch Justify win the Santa Anita Derby. And the thing to note, we talked about it going in, Bolt Doro, the connections of Bolt Doro with the Kentucky Derby in mind, it was less likely that they'd challenge him early. Now, when you see these fractions, 47-4, 112-3, the first quarter was like 23 and high change. That looks like kind of a slow pace. It was not. I mean, the thing about when tracks are really deep, tiring, and playing slow, people see fractions and they think like a 23-4 and a 47 on that type of track is the exact same thing as a 23 and 47 on a much faster track. That's not the case. When a track is playing slow, not only will the final time be slower, but the fractions all the way around are going to be a little bit slower. So, I mean, you hear people saying, the Santa Anita Derby was run with a real slow pace. No, it wasn't. The Santa Anita Oaks was won with a real slow pace. No, it wasn't. Shoot, they went practically 25 and 50 in the starter allowance race at a mile, and you get like 124-foot run-up for the mile races at Santa Anita. I mean, don't buy into any of that. This pace was, it wasn't fast, but I mean, it certainly wasn't, slow. I mean, for a horse like Justify, it was a walk in the park. Anyway, we're going to go watch the Santa Anita Derby now. All right, we got Justify breaking from post position number 6. He's got the white silks, white cap. Incidentally, he came into this race, I think it was 1,252 pounds. He run his last race at 1,258 pounds. So if you're into the whole horse weight thing, one thing I can tell you, obviously, Justify is a big horse, but he's 6 pounds lighter than he was for his last race. Completely irrelevant. I don't even know why I told you that. But anyway, Bolt Doro is breaking from post position number 3. Justify from post position 6. An important thing to note here is that Justify has had bad breaks in his first 2 starts coming out of the gate. He broke very slow in his debut. It was just a 5-horse field, but he was off last. Almost got, I wouldn't say got left, but he broke slow and had a bad first step in that debut. And then he just kind of took off and pulled Flavion Pratt, who was riding him that day, just pulled Pratt right into a speed duel, 21 and change first quarter with Baffert's other horse. It looked like a real quick horse. You should get the lead easy in there. And, Justify under the hammerlock dueled the other Baffert horse into submission. Baffert said in the post-race interview he was, furious how things went early in the race. After breaking slow, Justify rushed up, dueled his other horse into defeat. And the other Baffert in the race, the speed Baffert that had run before, ended up, last beaten about 40 lengths, was ease, couldn't even finish the race after trying to run head-and-head with Justify early. Justify got left the first time. The second time out, he bobbled a bit coming out of the gate. He had a bad break again. You see him, he's a maturing horse, and this was by far and away his best break ever. He broke beautifully. His first step wasn't bad. Very encouraging for the Kentucky Derby because you get a 20-horse field, a horse of his running style that's never been behind horses. He needs to break. This was, it may seem like I'm making way too much out of the start, but very encouraging sign here because he broke well. And Bolt D'Oro, sorry about that. I always want to call him Bolt D'Oro. It's Bolt D'Oro. He's a horse who has, has not been a good breaker throughout his career. He doesn't have a good first step, but he actually broke pretty well here today. But unfortunately, it was the 4 kind of come in a little bit, so he got knocked around a little at the start, just a slight bump. Anyway, with that said, you're going to watch Justify roll to the lead. And, a forward-thinking ride by Castellano. He wasn't going to push and shove and try to act as his own rabbit to press Justify. Here we go. See, that's as good, by far and away, better than Justify's ever broke. I mean, he broke, for him, that was a tremendous break. You see Bolt D'Oro here in second, down inside. He kind of had to hope that this maiden here, recent maiden winner, this horse won his maiden race last time with a big figure, but he needed him to go press, and that wasn't going to happen. So right here, getting no pressure early, a free ride on the lead, and Justify is letting it out a notch here. Castellano wasn't going to act as his own rabbit. It would have been nice for Mick Ruiz. Mick Ruiz had another horse in the race, but the other horse had absolutely no early speed. If he had some cheap sprinter who could run opening quarter and 21 flat, it would have really helped him, but he had no such 3-year-old, and you hate to see rabbits in these big races, but Bolt D'Oro, the Derby is in mind 4 weeks later. Castellano did not act as his own rabbit to press Justify early, so he's got to move now. At least he's got him, finishing up well through this race. But if you remember the last time that Bolt D'Oro ran, he had a big move, and he was able. McKenzie is a horse that's not quite as handy and not quite as push button as Justify is, and Castellano made a big outside move and kind of pinned McKenzie down. So Mike Smith, wasn't going to let that happen against. I don't think he was out into the track too far because the inside paths were bad. I actually thought the inside was okay yesterday at Santa Anita, but a little clever ride there by Mike Smith to basically not allow Castellano to make some real early aggressive move on Bolt D'Oro and then pin him down. So very impressive by Justify. The final time, 1:49.3. That doesn't appear to be fast, but trust me, that is sensational time over what was a deep and tiring racing surface. That is much better time than face value. And a couple additional things to note out of this race. Right here, what you're seeing is the right front of Bolt D'Oro, and he grabbed a quarter at the start in this race. You see, about the size of a nickel there, the cut that he has, that's his right fore. So you might want to note that for Bolt D'Oro. And as far as Justify goes, he sprung a shoe in the race. He's, had spread his shoe. So, basically had a shoe get mangled up a little bit. It's hard to know when that happened. There's no reports. Did it happen coming out of the gate? Did it happen during the race? Did it happen, could have happened on the gallop out for all we know. But, Justify sprung a shoe, came back with that. And, when you get these deep and tiring tracks, I remember when Smarty Jones won the Kentucky Derby, it was that year the track was a sea of slop. It was real, tiring surface. And Nick Zito had 2 horses in the Derby that year. I believe it was the Cliff's Edge and Birdstone. And between Nick Zito's two horses, he lost 3 shoes. One of the 2 horses, I mean, you could go to Google and look it up, lost 2 shoes in the race. The other one lost a shoe. When you get these, real deep and tiring tracks, sometimes that happens. But that's just something to note. That is Bolt Doro right there, grabbed a quarter. Justify sprung a shoe. So the top 2 finishers had, some little issues arise, and who knows, maybe some of the horses behind him did as well, but they're just not, there's nothing to report there. There aren't, reporters going around those barns asking for quotes. So, but that is, that is something to note. All right, moving along to the Wood Memorial. It was won by Vino Rosso in very, very controversial fashion. This is a son of Keeneland out of a Street Cry mare. I mean, this is, that pedigree is just, phenomenal 2-turn pedigree. Both such great racehorses. Keeneland, won the Breeders' Cup Classic, drawn off in the slop at 1.25 miles. Won the Dubai World Cup big at 1.25 miles. Street Cry also won the Dubai World Cup, drawn off at 1.25 miles. Obviously Street Cry sired Zenyatta, the sire of Winks, the superstar in Australia. But this pedigree here, this is a late. It's not an early developing pedigree, I'll tell you that, and it is definitely distance. I mean, when you see that, Keeneland to Street Cry, that horse is going to want to go 2 turns. It's going to want to run all day. And, for Vino Rosso to be bet to favoritism in his debut, and, the final time wasn't too fast first half, but he got a good number when he won his debut. That had to be a real harbinger of good things to come. Vino Rosso, he's been training very well going into the Wood Memorial. After the Tampa Derby, he got no pace in the Tampa Derby, really didn't, kick on too well. But he had that morning workout against Audible. He made Audible, the Florida Derby winner, look like a claimer in that war. I mean, it was just Vino Rosso just absolutely toyed with Audible in the Florida Derby work, which was his work 2 back coming out of the Tampa Derby. Now, he did work with Magnum Moon last time for his final prep, and Magnum Moon outworked him. But anyway, Vino Rosso, he broke from post position 9. Paid close attention to the stretch. There was an incident there that almost, that caused a lot of controversy. That said, let's watch the replay. Okay, and right here you see Vino Rosso. He's got the Rapoli colors, the orange cap, the blue silks. We're going to go ahead and run this now. Breaking from far outside, post position number 9. You're going to watch. He's going to break slow, and Velasquez is going to really get after him, start pushing and shoving. Boy, Johnny V really wanted him in the game here. You see him, I mean, this is a pretty busy ride for a horse coming out of the gate. He's still kind of, hoop-de-doo, pushing and shoving a little bit, trying to keep him, as close as he was. You'd think he'd maybe be a little closer than that for as hard-ridden as he was. But you've got Jeremy Rose, an old-time revival, and this horse is running off here. 22-4, blistering first quarter. Rose really is having a hard time reining this horse in, and he's going fast and kind of, forces these horses along. You've got Enticed. You've got the Restoring Hope, the horse of Baffert's, who just won the maiden race, who had been training so well, and hung out way wide there is Vino Rosso, the eventual winner. You still got old-time revival practically, running off, and he's going to pay the price for, 22-4 is ridiculous. But you see, Velasquez is already under a ride. Vino Rosso gave him some fits early. He got after him. Velasquez really rode this horse practically the whole race. It's a wonder he didn't. You'd expect the horse to flatten out on a jockey riding him that much, but here's where you're going to see Vino Rosso come all the way down and really cause some problems here. You see him he's shifting in. He's bumped enticed a couple times. He keeps shifting in. Velasquez actually, they left him up, but the stewards fined Johnny V $1,500 for this ride. I don't think it was Velasquez's fault. It was more the horse's fault, but, $1,500 fine for Johnny Velasquez, but they left him up. Vino Rosso can run all day. I mean, he's a horse. If there's one thing he seems to have in spades, it's stamina. I mean, he had his ears written off. Like I said, Vino Rosso, ears written off, just Velasquez pushing, shoving, trying to get him into contention, extremely wide, and did not flatten out. That's, you really see the curling out of street cry coming through. I mean, this horse is a route horse. There's stamina breeding there, but we're going to watch the head on here. This is where the real controversy in the race come. I mean, Vino Rosso kept getting in, really fouled enticed a couple times.
The stewards are now reviewing these.
And you're going to see Velasquez give this horse a crack after the wire, like really annoyed here. You see it's coming up. This is well after the wire. Right there, he gave him just a little jab out of irritation. You see Vino Rosso just coming in on enticed repeatedly, fouled him a couple times, intimidated him. I mean, he started way out here and drove him down inside, bumping him. And, it was a 3-length margin, was the final margin of victory. You see Velasquez giving him the shot. One thing I'll say, if this race was, if this race was the fourth race on a Wednesday card and that was a bug rider, they would have disqualified. The stewards would have taken about a minute to disqualify that horse. But it's a major race, a Kentucky Derby prep. You got John Velasquez, who's a very respectable, very, very respected Hall of Fame rider, in the irons. He is going to get the benefit of the doubt in a situation like that. And, it was a 3-length margin. Vino Rosso was the best and probably going to win it anyway. And you always got to try to protect the better. That's the most important thing for the stewards. And that's why they have that house rule in New York where they, even though enticed, clearly got fouled a couple times, got intimidated, pushed down. There was a 3-length margin. The stewards could say that did not impact the outcome of the race. Enticed finished second. He would have finished, he probably would have finished second in the opinion of the stewards, is what they're going to tell you if that did not happen, the repeated bumping there. But as well as I do, if this was the fourth race on a Wednesday and that was a bug rider or an unheralded rider or a rider that doesn't have the respect of the stewards, even with the 3-length margin of victory, they'd have made an example of the rider. But fortunately for the bettors of Vino Rosso, it was the Wood Memorial. It was Johnny Velasquez in the irons. And the 3-length margin, boy, you had to be almost laughing, not worried. Shoot, if you made a big bet or, a huge bet on him at 4-1, I don't think you had to be worried in the least, just because, he certainly did look like the better horse. And in a big spot with a well-respected rider, they're going to leave that number up. I mean, it wasn't a situation where they're going to make example of a rider. So, Vino Rosso, to me, I've gotten a lot of respect for this horse. I mean, I think he's more horse than people think. I mean, he's a horse that just can run. He can run all day. I mean, you see how he was. All these races prior had real slow paces. This is the first time he ever got to run in a fast-paced race, and I mean, he's got great stamina. I mean, Velasquez, a horse should flatten out when they're, push and shove like that coming out of the gate, hung up wide. The horse did not cooperate at all for Velasquez, just tried to lug in repeatedly. John Velasquez had a really hard time with this horse pretty much the entire race, and You see, even after winning a big prep, most jockeys want to give their horse a pat on the shoulder after winning the race. He gave him a very frustrated crack of the whip. He got himself a $1,500 fine. But Vino Rosso, I kind of like him a little bit. They're going to go fast early in the Kentucky Derby. He's got the kind of pedigree. He's certainly maturing. He trained very well into this. He won clear. The figure was good. There's some things to like about Vino Rosso. You got to think John Velasquez is going to wind up on, there's a couple other Pletcher-trained horses who he's far more likely to wind up riding than Vino Rosso. This ride might come open. I'll tell you what's a shame that Calvin Burrell's riding, I believe, at Fairgrounds this year, and he's like, 5 for 100, not getting any rides. Wouldn't it be fun to see it? Burrell gave Pletcher his first Derby win, if you recall, on Super Saver, after, Pletcher had a lot of hard luck in the race, just couldn't win the race before. But, this horse would, this is a horse that wants to go to the rail himself, lugging in and everything, and he wants to take himself out of the race. He wants to do everything, basically, that Calvin Burrell wants to do as a rider. Wouldn't it be fun to see this horse paired up with Burrell and you get a wet track, you get Curlin as what a fun, I don't think Pletcher will go to Burrell just because he's been like 5% this year, 8% last year, 9%. But this would be a horse that's just crying out for Calvin Burrell, and Velasquez is going to be coming off to ride. Maybe he'll ride Entice, maybe he'll ride a horse who runs next week, but I don't think he'll ride Vino Rosso. But this is a horse that I kind of can warm up to. He'll be on my tickets underneath. Anyway, moving along, we got Good Magic winning the Bluegrass. You see, he made his return in the Fountain of Youth. Promises Fulfilled and Strike Power, the two horses who hooked up through the wild 21-4 first quarter in the Florida Derby breakaway speed duel. Pressure can burst a pipe, and it burst those two horses that day. But in the Fountain of Youth, it was Strike Power's first time around 2 turns, and he was, very judiciously, conservatively ridden by Luis Saez that day. He relaxed off of Promises Fulfilled. Promises Fulfilled, had it all his own way, 48-1 for a half, no pressure. And those two horses, Good Magic tried to come to them, and they kicked away. Good Magic just could not gain. It was, he was a length and a half off, and he ended up third by 4.5, so he gave up 3 lengths, through the far turn in the stretch to those two horses. And, in aim, 3 wide, but they just outkicked him. But that happens with 2 quality speed horses when they don't hook up and they relax off each other, because they want to try to outfinish Good Magic. You take the same 2 horses and you come back in the Florida Derby, and one of them wants to get that edge to be out in front, and they both, rely on aggressive tactics coming out of the gate. Then you get that breakaway speed duel, and both of these horses, second to last and last, both beating 35 lengths. Just pace makes the race. That's the old saying, and it's gospel. Pace makes the race. Very true. Anyway, Good Magic, post 10 in the Bluegrass. He didn't have to improve figures here to win it, but he got the job done. We're going to watch it now. Okay, we got it queued up here. There is Good Magic is the 11 horse. He's in post 10, but there was a scratch, so he's the 11 horse. This was a race, when I handicapped it, I thought there could be a pace meltdown in here. There were like 5 or 6 speeds. Now, one of them, Quip, scratched. He's going to run next week. So that was one speed that scratched. And kind of surprisingly, the remaining speed horses were ridden kind of judiciously early. There was no speed duel. It made it made a pretty honest pace instead of a hot pace. And the one-dimensional closers like Marconi and Zip Zap, they needed a meltdown up front. They needed a very hot and contested pace, and they didn't get it. They got a very fair and moderate type pace. So with that said, let's watch the Bluegrass. There's Good Magic under Jose Ortiz. Jose rode a real smart, he's the best in the business right now, the Eclipse Award winner last year, and Jose did a nice job taking Good Magic in hand. If the speed war would have developed, Good Magic would have been in perfect position to relax off of it, but he was a little wide into the first turn. But Jose was really well situated for no matter what happened. If they went too fast up front, it would have been perfect. They didn't, and he's still in a good spot. Just a typical good ride from Jose. You see Marconi back here. The European rider, Ryan Moore, come in to get some experience on him, and he's really, pushing and shoving. He's practically up here with Good Magic. Marconi was ridden very aggressively, and Marconi was pace dependent. He absolutely needed pace. He didn't get it. You see the Flame Away on the lead here. The 12 ends up staying on to run a good second. We thought there might be a speed duel with a hot pace in this race, and we got egg on our face. It just never developed. But Good Magic, we talked about, we liked his chances coming in, and there he goes. He's pretty much got the race won here. You see Jose Lozcano, things worked out very good for Jose Lozcano and Flame Away. Flame Away ran a good race. He just can't go with Good Magic. You're going to see the Lucas Horse Sporting Chance is going to veer out and get himself disqualified. He's lugging in now under the right hand. Now he's going to come way out under the left hand, and there. That was decisive enough to get disqualified. So Good Magic, this was a workmanlike performance. It wasn't brilliant, it wasn't dazzling, but he'll be third off the layoff going into the Derby. You got Chad Brown. Where is Chad? I don't even know where he's at in here. Right, that looks like him right there. But anyway, Good Magic, the 2-year-old champion. Chad got him to fire in the third start of his career, he only ran 3 races of his career. The juvenile was the third, so he'll be third off the layup. He's going to try to get him to peak in the Kentucky Derby. Maybe he can. You see here, he's a Curlin. Maybe he can get him to peak, but if he does, it'll be without my money. I don't think I'll have Good Magic. Maybe I'll put him defensively on a couple tickets underneath, but if he does it, he's going to do it without me. But he's another, just like Vino Rosso, a son of Curlin. They're getting good now, these Curlins, and out of a hard-spun mare. Hard-spun run a great second in the Kentucky Derby. So those are the 3 major Kentucky Derby prep winners from Saturday, and Justified, big number. That was a slow track. Do not kid yourself by taking these at face value. Very, very slow track. Justify, yes, he got it all his own way. Yes, he pretty much had no one pressing him early. There was no one in there quick enough to press him early. I guarantee you it would have been whoever would have tried to go with him early on that track. Even Bolt Thoro, who's such an immensely talented horse that I deeply respect, if he would have tried to go with Justify early, if he would have tried to act as his own rabbit, it would have been worse for him than it was for Justify. So Justify, very important overlooked factor was that he broke good. First time he ever, you see, it's not mentioned in the line in his debut, but he broke very bad. He was off last in his debut, and then off step slow here. He kind of bobbled. Broke good. He's going to need to break good in the Kentucky Derby, because if he doesn't break good, his race is over. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. That's my take on the 3 preps from Saturday.